everyone, here we go, Calibrate Christmas Part 2. Now last time what we talked about is when it comes to calibrating Christmas, we have to calibrate our giving. Tonight what we're going to talk about is we have to calibrate also how we receive. Remember I said that with those two areas, giving or receiving, there's probably one of those that comes easier for you and one that's a little bit more difficult. To be honest, for me, it's receiving. I have a tough time receiving things from people. I have a tough time taking things. If someone says like, hey, can I do something for you? My just knee-jerk reaction is always like, no, I'm fine. If someone says, can I help you with something? I don't even mean to most of the time, but I'll just say, no, it's good. It's hard for me to take. It's hard for me to receive. Both of these areas, giving and receiving, these are both important and they're both involved in Christmas. Now, you can probably figure out for yourself which one of those areas comes easier for you, giving or receiving. When it comes to giving, I don't really have a problem with that. It's easy to give. If someone asks me for help, I don't mind doing it. If someone needs something from me, I don't mind giving it. And there's even some people out there that it's almost like a superpower, their ability to give. It's their thing. Again, you could probably think if this is you or think of someone who you know that's like this. In my life, it's my wife, Megan, no question. She just gives, and she gives selflessly, and she gives so easily, just like breathing for her. She just does it. When we were first married, I remember even for Christmas, I'd come home and there'd be all of a sudden 10 presents under the tree. And I'd be like, what happened? I was gone for 2 minutes. What happened? She's like, oh, I don't know. I just was walking down and I went to the store and I did this and I saw this and then I went there and I saw this and I saw just a few little things. And I'm looking and they're not little things. Now for me that was hard because I felt like it was uneven then. So my mentality is not just being like, oh, thank you. My mentality is like, okay, how can I shrink this deficit? If I see 10 things, I got to make sure there's 10 things. And not only 10 things, but that looks like it could maybe be an article of clothing wrapped in there. So maybe I'll get something for her. This sounds, when I shake it, sounds like a book. Maybe I got to get her a book. I want to make things even. Now, of course, Megan didn't care about that. She just wanted to give. That made her happy. For me, though, I felt like I had to make it even. It kind of stressed me out, honestly, until I figured out how this was all going to work. Okay, it's okay that it's not always even. It's okay. So what we're going to look at tonight are not always things. We're going to look at 4 points that are for sometimes. Our first sometimes is sometimes receiving is necessary. I remember that story in Luke 10, Mary and Martha. Right, we already talked about this last time as well, but Jesus comes to their house and Martha right away gets to work serving. She's going to give to Jesus. Mary comes and just sits at Jesus' feet and listens to his teaching. She receives. So of course, Martha gets upset by this and she comes to Jesus and says hey, don't you even care that Mary's not helping me at all? Tell her to come help me. And this is what Jesus says in Luke 10, 41 through 42. But the Lord answered her, Martha, Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things, but one thing is necessary. Mary has chosen the good portion, which will not be taken from her. Now, keep in mind, I'd probably say 9 times out of 10, Mary should help Martha. If they have guests over, if they have family visiting, whatever it is, it shouldn't be one person doing all the work. In this particular case, sometimes receiving was necessary. She was choosing the better thing in this particular situation. Again, not always, but in this one. It's so easy for us to get distracted and feel anxious or feel troubled. And those times what we need to do is we need to receive the peace that only Jesus can give. It's so easy for us to feel like we're lesser or to feel negative about ourselves or inferior. In those times we need to receive the truth of God's word, that he says you're valuable, that you are worth something. We need to receive his love. There's times where we'll be scared or hurt or confused, especially in today's times. We can receive God's comfort. Sometimes receiving is necessary. Sometimes, number 2, sometimes you need to receive better to give better. I remember one time in particular, I was in youth group, and there was an elderly couple who had a campsite that they owned, and they kind of operated it, but they were older. So it's hard for them to keep it up. And this was fall, maybe winter, a storm had come through, and there was just brush everywhere, branches down, leaves. And so we went out there as a youth group to clear the campsite, so it'd be ready for when summer came. And while we're out there working, we were going to be there, all day long. The thing was, I was old enough that I had some responsibility, I could be kind of independent, but I wasn't old enough yet that I really thought things through. Maybe you're in the same kind of place. I don't know if I ever grew out of that, honestly. So I went out there. I drove myself out there. I had signed up for this all on my own. I was really proud of myself, but I didn't bring any water. I didn't bring any food, and we were going to be there all day. So like the first few hours, I'm out there, I'm raking leaves, I'm pulling branches, I'm making this big pile, I'm doing all this stuff. And then like a few hours go by and I'm dragging. I'm slow, I'm feeling lightheaded. I remember this is not going the way I thought it was going to go. And our leader that was out there noticed this, and he's like, hey, Michael, do you need anything? Can I get you some water? Can I get you some food? And I think just because of the way he phrased it, he said, can I do something for you? Without even thinking, what did I do? Right away I said, oh, no, I'm fine. And even in my head, I remember thinking, like, why did I say that? I am very thirsty and about ready to pass out. And he would offer again. I'd be like, no, I'm good. Like, oh my, why am I doing that? Why do I keep doing this? Finally, he walked over like with a bottle of water and like a protein bar and like put him in my hand. He was like, here. And I drank some water, ate the protein bar. And here's the thing. I don't know if you guys knew this or not, but when you eat food, it like turns into energy. It's amazing. So suddenly, I'm back at it, right? I'm like fueled up. I'm going again stronger than I was even before. I needed to receive in order to keep giving. And that's just the truth of how things work. If we only give out of our own ability to give, at some point we're going to run out. We need to be filled up. We need to receive in order to continue giving. I have an example here. I don't know if you have one of these or not, but in our house we have a Brita pitcher. Now this one is a big one. We looked for the biggest one we could find because we drink a lot of water. Now it holds a lot of water, but at some point it will run out. At some point it will become empty. And well, here's what you do. Here's the secret. You open it up, and then you put more water in, and it filters it, and then it gets more water. It's amazing. So it has to be filled up in order to keep going. It has to be filled up in order to give. And we're the same way. We have to receive from God in order to continue giving better. Sometimes, number 3, sometimes you need to ask to receive. And in 1 Chronicles 4, verse 10, there's an interesting thing that happens. It says there, Jabez called upon the God of Israel, saying, oh, that you would bless me and enlarge my border, and that your hand might be with me, and that you would keep me from harm, so that it might not bring me pain. We look at the prayer there that Jabez has, and honestly, it looks kind of selfish. I mean, in there he says that you would bless me, enlarge my border, be with me, keep me from harm, so I don't have pain. I mean, all these things that are very self-motivated. And we would look at that and think, that's not the kind of prayer that God's going to answer. Was a little bit more of that verse. The very end of the verse says, and God granted what he asked. Now, we're not guaranteed that anything we ask for we're going to get. The point I'm making, though, is that it's okay to ask. And sometimes in order to receive, we have to ask. Megan and I, for our 10th wedding anniversary a few years ago, we went to a concert. So we went away to the Bay Area. There's a concert there we wanted to see. And when I was buying the tickets online, I just looked, and it's like, you see seats that are here, you see seats that are here, and they're a lot cheaper here than here. Let's get the ones a little bit higher. That's kind of how I operate. We get there, though, it's a football stadium, and I was amazed at how high up they have seats. But as we're up there, we would look down at the stage, and you could barely even tell there was a person on the stage. So we're sitting there, and we noticed as we're sitting up in these seats, there's pockets around of empty seats, maybe seats that someone bought and they didn't show up, or maybe there's empty for whatever reason. And so we decided, well, let's go ask and see if we can maybe just move down a few rows. And I'm like, yeah, right, this isn't going to work. So we go to the ticket counter, we ask, wait, we're way up high, we're the furthest high up row. We notice there's some empty seats. Is there any way we can move? It's our 10th anniversary. And the guy's like, hold on, I'll be right back. And he goes away for a little bit. Then he comes back, he says, okay, well, the best I could do is move you down to the 5th row from the stage. It's like, oh, really? That's the best you can do? I mean, come on. No, we were yes, we will take that immediately. So we went from the very top down to the 5th row. We could almost reach out and touch the act on the stage. All because we asked. If we hadn't asked, we would not have received that. And again, I'm not saying this is always going to work out, because certainly it won't, but in that case, it did. Jesus says in Matthew 7:7, ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and it will be open to you. If then you, who are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father, who is in heaven, give good things to those who ask him? See, here's the key. God gives good gifts. So we can ask him for things, and if he deems that it is good, then he might give it to us. We just bring our request to him, we leave him there, and then we trust him to do what he's going to do. But we have to ask sometimes. And again, it's not your definition of good. It's well, $1 million would be pretty good. God truly knows what is best. God truly knows what is good for you. It's his definition of good. So what we do is we ask him, and the reason we ask, not that he doesn't already know, we ask more for ourselves. So that when God does something, we recognize that it's God. If we ask for something and then he does that thing. There's a story that pastors use a lot as an illustration of this, of someone driving through the parking lot. And they're at rush, they got to get home, they got to stop by the store, they got to do all these things. So they're just like, God, please, I need a parking space. It's completely filled, I need a space. And like right up front, a space opens up, car pulls out, and the person praying says, oh, never mind, God, I got it. That's not what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to ask so that we recognize when God provides. Our fourth and final sometimes is sometimes you need to receive even if you can't repay. Have you ever been in line like at Starbucks or Dutch or just fast food and the person in front of you pays for your car? It's a pretty cool feeling, right? You can't really repay that person though. But what are you expected to do? Normally in those situations, you're expected to then pay for the car behind you. One time this happened to me. I pulled up to Starbucks and I have it down to a science. I get the biggest drink I can get and it costs $3.55, which even that is a little steep for me. I don't do it very often because I'm kind of cheap. I mean, some of you people out there are getting your $5 and $6 drinks. It's crazy. Who would even do that? Megan. But seriously, I mean, that's an expensive drink. So $3.55 is about my limit. And so I was there this one time. I do that, I pull up and they say, hey, the person in front of you paid for your drink. I'm like, wow, that's cool. And the cashier's just kind of looking at me like, huh? What are you going to do? I'm like, I'll pay for the car behind me. She's like, okay, type some things up. That'll be $24.78. I'm like, that's a lot of $3.55 drinks right there. $24.7. I mean, man, I got the short end of this deal. And look behind me, it's like one of those huge giant vans. Some of you know what I'm talking about. It's like, what did I just pay for? How many drinks is that? But that's kind of how it goes sometimes, I guess. One time I was at a church and I heard someone talking about this, and he said that same thing happened to him. He pulled up, they said, hey, the car in front of you paid for it. He's like, oh man, that's awesome. It's kind of like a pause, a awkward pause, and the cashier says, do you want to pay for the car behind you? And he said he went, nope, and then took his drink and drove off. Now when I heard that, I kind of thought, wow, this guy's kind of a jerk. But his point was that the car in front of him was blessing him. And sometimes we pass on the blessing. But in that case, if he had just passed the blessing straight on, the blessing really never happened to him because now he's paying for the car behind him. So really it's just whoever that first person is, whoever that last person is, that's the blessing that's happening. And he said that he just felt like, you know what, he could just receive this blessing and that was it. And again, in general, it's not a policy. We want to just think about can I get something for myself. But the point is that sometimes we pass the blessing on, but sometimes you can't. Sometimes you can't pay it back, you can't pass it on. Sometimes you just have to receive the blessing. Now let's be honest, some of you out there know that maybe you're a little too good at receiving. You're a little too good at taking. So you need to learn to bless others more, to give to others more. But some of you have a hard time receiving. Some of you have a hard time taking a blessing. And we need to learn to be good at receiving as well. And here's why. Because when it comes to Christmas, it's about giving, but it's also about receiving. Christmas is summed up really in John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son. And it goes on to say that whoever believes, or in our case, what we're talking about, we could also say whoever receives will not perish. See, the thing about the Christmas gift that was given, the gift of Jesus Christ, is that gift was given by God, but then it has to be received by us. It's not just enough that we know what happened. It's not just enough that we sing songs about it in church or that we have a little nativity scene. We have to actually receive that gift. This applies to grace. Grace can't be earned. It can't be repaid. It just has to be received. It just has to be accepted. And it's a necessary thing for us to do. When we look at Christmas, it's definitely about giving. God gave the greatest gift. Jesus came to lay down his life. That was the purpose. He came to the manger so that he would go to the cross. But what you and I have to do then is receive that gift. Now, I don't know all of your stories, that maybe you've already received that gift, or maybe you're not sure. Maybe you're wondering if you ever have. Maybe you know that you haven't. Maybe you're like me, and after growing up in the church, even being a pastor's kid, several years later, you realize that you thought it was enough just to grow up in a Christian home, to go to church, to have parents and siblings who are Christians, but you never actually received that gift for yourself. My prayer for this lesson tonight is that we understand the importance of receiving. Not in a selfish way, but in a way that we see the only way that we will ever be made right with God is to receive a gift we could do nothing about. a gift you can't earn, a gift that it doesn't matter how good you are or how bad you are, it's a gift that you have to receive. My prayer as we are in this Christmas season is that we would all understand the importance of that, and that we would all truly look and reflect and say, have I ever received that gift? And if you haven't, if you even have a question that you have or haven't, tonight talk to your small group, talk to your small group leader, or talk to me, text me, call me. When you see me next time, find someone to talk this about, and really make sure that another Christmas doesn't go by without understanding, without receiving that gift that was given. Christmas is about giving. It's also been about receiving. A gift has been offered, it's been stretched out to you, and it's then up to you then to take that gift and receive it.